Alright, as promised, we've got our 1200mm pop wing. So what we're going to do is, I've already actually pre-assembled some of it. I did the pre-assemble all the way up to the point to where it's going to differ from the 900mm pop wing. Now I'll go through and show you what I did just to make sure, but it's really, almost as straightforward as it can be. So I put it together. Once I get, done showing you everything that's done to it already so that you're caught up, then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start where it differs, alright? And there's actually a couple different things with the 1200mm pop wing. So let's go ahead and begin. Okay, so here we go. You can see right here, and I know this is kind of a wide shot, but we got the pop wing. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over. I'm going to point out a couple of the key features here. This thing goes together pretty much identical to the 900mm. The only difference is the addition of this carbon fiber spar right here. Alright, it's just a bigger version of the spar that you're going to install. Simply put the two wing halves together. I glued them together with CA glue. I put glue on one side, and then I put activator on the other side, and I made sure I covered this side really, really well in glue. You actually kind of want it to seep out of the seam in the middle here. Okay, I glued it together. I just held it on the table, held it together for a couple seconds, waited for that CA to cure. Alright, next what I did was I filled this groove right here with some CA glue. And it didn't have to be foam safe because we're dealing with EPP foam. But I filled the glue with that, and then I pressed that carbon fiber rod through right into the little groove. Sprayed a little, basically sprayed a little activator. Once I sprayed the activator, I let it set up, and then we moved on to the next rod. Next, there's a little carbon fiber rod that's going to go here on the top, and you can see it right there. Alright, that little top carbon fiber rod, just same thing. Put as much CA in that little slit as possible, slid the rod in, activated it, and let it dry. Now one thing you're going to have to do, because you've already glued this center portion right here together, you're actually going to have to take a razor blade and run it through where that carbon fiber rod is going to go. That way you can actually slide that carbon fiber, the other carbon fiber rod that's going to go perpendicular to this seam. Alright, you're going to have to give it a little bit of time to cure and then cut it with a hobby knife so it'll slide in nice and even. Okay. Next, also on the top, you'll see right here, there's two slits that you have to do the exact same thing to. Slit it with a hobby knife, that way you got enough room, put some glue inside of it, and then go ahead and slid the rod in there. Once the rod's in there, activate it, and you should be good to go. As for the motor mount fits on the exact same way as the 900mm, it's just a lot bigger. What I used was CA glue for now. I simply just coated the top part of the motor mount with CA glue. Let me flip this over here. As well as these back two little prongs, I put a little bit of CA on the insides. And I made sure I put enough so that when I squeezed it on there, it kind of overlapped, kind of squeezed out, and then I could smooth it out and activate it, and it would dry and hold it on nice and neat. Now you want to make sure you get this thing on nice and straight. You can see there's actually a little bit of grooves there on the center. Those grooves should line up right with that center line that you glued this wing together. You don't want any torque, you don't want any angle, because it's going to affect the way that this thing flies. Alright? And then, the last thing but not least, I went ahead and did the winglets on both sides. All you got to do is make sure that you line everything up so it's nice and even, get it as even as possible, CA them on, let it cure, and then you're good to go. So as you can see right here, I've got the 1200mm ready to go, and we're going to start off with the first process. Alright, the first process that we're worried about, there should be a little bag that comes in your kit. Looks something like this, and what it's going to have your control horns, your little servo mounts, and it's also going to have some of your, these little wooden plates. Alright, these little wooden plates, let me go ahead and pull these out. But these wooden plates, what they're going to do is they're going to serve as a tie down on the underside of this airplane. Alright, trying to get a little bit of problems going out. Let me flip this airplane up. Go upside down and I'll show you what I mean. You see right here where these carbon fiber rods come together, they're not really joined. They're just kind of nice and next to each other. Alright? What these plates are going to do, let me make sure I get this on right, is these plates are just going to glue into place right there, and that's going to kind of help tie it together. So you should have one on that side, and then you should have one on the other side like so. Alright? And then you're going to glue those two pieces together. Alright, so let me go ahead and glue that. I'll get back with you as soon as I'm done, and we'll see if we have any problems or whatnot when installing these. Okay, so next you can see we've basically got our joints. What these are just joints to help strengthen up the 2 carbon fiber rods, or the 3 carbon fiber rods, kind of make them all one. I don't know how well that's going to work, but hey, we're going to follow the directions a little bit on that one. Alright, next what we're going to do is actually install our servos. Now, we just decided to go with Hextronic HXT 900s, which is just a standard 9-gram servo. Alright, I've got 2 of them. Now the directions basically call for me to install the horns on here and then try to install it into the airplane, but we're going to actually go just from a little bit of experience with the other 2 pop wings that I've built. We're going to leave the horns off, and the reason we're going to do that is because once we get these servos installed, we'll plug all of my electronics up and we'll basically center the receiver and the transmitter once everything is bound. We'll let everything center, and then we'll install the horns with the control rods on the actual airplane. That way it's just easier to mechanically center. And then it'll only take about 1 to 2, maybe 3 clicks to digitally trim everything out. That's the luck that I've had with all the other pop wings, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So we'll leave the horns off for now. Alright, first things first. The same bag that you got these little joints out of, alright, it's going to look a little bit like this. The same bag is going to have these 2 squares, cut out squares of balsa wood or thin wood. Go ahead and take those out, along with the mounting screws that came with your servos. Alright, you're going to take those out. Alright, and now that I got that out, you're going to run your wire through, and then you're going to just insert your 9-gram servo right into this little piece of wood right here. Alright, now be careful because this wood is extremely flexible, and then you're basically just going to work it in. Alright, let me get that down there a little bit more. You're going to work it in, and then you're going to screw the screws into the actual servo piece itself. You'll screw the screws in and mount the wood to it. And what that's going to do is give it a nice flatter surface. You can see on the bottom, it'll give you a nice flatter surface to glue into the pop wing. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and mount those in there off camera, that way you don't got to sit here and watch me shake and fiddle and fumble with everything, because it usually takes me a while. And I'll let you know if we have any problems. Like I said, definitely be careful with that wood, because you can see right there how extremely thin it is, alright? So be careful with that. So let me go ahead and mount those, get those ready to go for the installation on the actual wing, and I'll get back with you. Well, I've got my servos installed. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I've got my servos installed on my nice little wooden piece here. Alright, some of the things that I would recommend as far as installing this wood piece is if your servos have stickers or decals like this right here, alright, take them off. Just take them off and get them out of the way, because they do get in the way of the installation. Alright, one more thing. Just do a quick measurement, and I know the servos aren't going to go on this side, but do a measurement of your servo wires to make sure that the wires are actually going to be long enough to reach from your servo hole to where your actual receiver is going to sit. So do that check beforehand. We did buy this as a kit form, that's why we're having to source all of our own parts. Plus what I wanted to do was kind of overclock this thing and make it a beast. We want to make it like close to 80-mile-an-hour capability, which is going to be ridiculous for this thing. Alright. So I've got my servos ready on the balsa. Like I said, we're going to leave the control horns alone for now, the servo horns. Next what we're going to do is go ahead and install the control horns. Now, if you can see right there, alright, I've got a mark right there. What you're going to do is measure from as close to the actual wing as possible. You're going to measure 95 millimeters. Okay, 95 millimeters is what your measurement's going to be. You're going to put a dot, and then you're going to center your control horn, okay, evenly on your little elevon. All right, you're going to want to center it. How you're going to do that is you're going to take your hobby knife. You find your mark. You take your hobby knife, and you basically just cut a slit right in the foam, just like that. All right, you want to make sure that slit goes deep enough so that whenever it's time to install the control horn, and that's going to be in that bag as well, that little bag of parts. Alright, your control horn should look like this. As soon as I can fiddle around and get it out. Alright. Control horns are going to look like this. Alright, little plastic pieces. You're going to make sure that this part right there, see how it kind of aims towards it? You're going to make sure that this part right here is actually facing towards the wing. So you're going to make sure that it's facing this way. Alright? You're going to cut that slit, and then you're simply just going to install the control horn in the slit that you cut. And you want to make it mount as flush as possible so that it kind of looks like that. I know it's hard to see. Alright, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and cut my slit, install my control horns, and the easiest thing to do is just use a little bit of CA glue. Take the CA, fill in that little slit, put some on the actual control horn itself, and then push it in there, let that CA kind of ooze out, smooth it out, and then throw a little activator on it. And you're going to want to make sure this is nice and cured before you start messing with the control rods. That way it's not moving around and moving position. Alright? So what I'm going to do is go ahead and cut those slits, install it. Once I'm done installing it, then I'm going to go ahead and take and make the servos go basically install. Now you're going to want to make sure your servo is positioned just like this. Alright? You want to make sure that that long piece, okay, the longer edge of your servo is facing towards the actual aileron or elevon, whatever you want to call them. Push it down in that little hole, put some glue on the back side of the servo, push it down, and then also you can put glue on the screws because the screws are going to poke through the foam, and you're going to mount it that way. Make sure you do drop your servo lead through the hole, that way you're not screwing anything up like that. Just push it down on into the hole, and then basically you should come out with an end product that looks something like that. Alright, you can see that my servo wire is on the outside or on the bottom side. Alright, so what I'm going to do is install it all the way up to this point on both sides, to include the control horns, and I'll get back to you just to see if there's any problems that I encountered or whatnot. Alright, so you can see we've got the servos installed. They're glued down nice and tight. Got the wires ran through. The wires are going to be kind of a tight fit, so what I might do is actually slice a groove that's going to go to my little compartment here. That way it gives me just that extra little inch, maybe a quarter of an inch on each side, that might actually get me the ability to get everything to wire up nice and neat. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to work on installing the motor. Alright, right on here on the motor mount. The motor that we've chosen is going to be a Turnigy 2826, about 2200 kV motor. There's a nice shot of it right there. I know it's a little bit of overkill. Alright, but we're going to just go for it and see what happens. Alright, this is going to give us the ability to balance it out with a heavier battery, 2200, maybe 2650, so we can get some nice long flight times, and then maybe, eventually, go ahead and mount a GoPro on top of it, alright? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount this motor. I'm going to mount it right up to it. Also what we've chosen was our Hobby King 35 amp ESC. We're just going to roll with the 35 amp for now. The reason we're choosing this is because it's got our linear BEC, 2 amp BEC, and then it's also will go from basically 3 to 4S, give us the ability to change. And this is an auto detection ESC, so it'll actually detect whether it's a 4 or a 3S. We don't got to program it or anything like that, so that's kind of nice. So let me go ahead and get everything plugged up on the motor. The motor is just going to simply go on an X mount. The X mount will then screw, and I've already measured it, screw right into the screws right here on the wood. Be careful not to over tighten it, because if you over tighten it, it will break the wood and then your pop wing is useless. So I'm going to go ahead and mount that up, and once it's done I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll begin wiring up the ESC, get a receiver on there, and then we'll center our servos, do our control rods, and then we should be done, minus trying to find the CG on this bad boy. So go ahead and stand by, let me get all this stuff quickly wired up, mounted, and we'll see what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so I went a little bit farther. I got super ambitious, but what you can see right here is normally people would use a prop saver on this. We went with a 6x4 E prop on it. Okay, we just want to put a regular collet just to test it. Now this motor at about half throttle actually just will basically hover this thing. So we are way overpowered, which is nice. You can see right here, basically what I've got is ESC and receiver already wired into there. Okay, all you're going to do is use a zip tie to hold your ESC in. The zip tie goes through the 2 holes. Alright, just don't tighten it down because it's just foam and it'll rip through it. So we mounted our ESC, we ran our wires, we set everything up. We're running right here 2200 milliamp battery, but the 2200 is not for sure yet. We're just using that to test it and everything. Okay, you can see on the other side right here that I don't have my servo horns connected yet. We're going to go ahead and bind it. Once we bind it, Make sure these servos are centered out and digitally trimmed all the way to center. And then we're going to go ahead and connect the horns and the arms. That way they're nice and neutral. Now, you don't want the bottom of this edge, okay, on this control surface, you don't want this bottom to be even with the bottom of this. Otherwise, you're going to have a natural tendency to basically dive down nose first. You're going to want them slightly up a little bit, all right, so that they kind of match with this surface. All right, that way at least have a little bit of up elevator, not so much, but not down. You want it to match up with that surface, and the reason being is because I'd rather have up elevator than down elevator, because up elevator means I can push down on the stick and even it out. Down elevator means when you go to throw it, it's going to plop in the ground before you can do anything. All right, same with that. Make sure this is just a little bit up, okay? Now it is a really long control surface, so just keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and plug everything in, get my transmitter set up. We're going to use a DX8 on this. Get the transmitter set up, get the horns all ready to go, and we should be good to go. All right, so let me go ahead and do that, and I'll let you know if I had any issues. So we've got everything in, the batteries in. The only thing we really have, excuse me for getting in the way, the only thing we really have to do now is figure out the servo issue. So we're going to center our servos. I've got everything set up. Now before we begin, keep in mind we've already done the servo, the actual control rod connector, the quick connectors or whatnot. And then let me zoom you in right here and I'll show you what I did. Okay, so bear with me while we get the shakes out of the way. Alright, so right here you can see the rod. We haven't connected our horn, our servo horn yet. Basically what you want to do is figure out the configuration that it's going to go on and then slip the rod through there. Okay, and what this is going to do is kind of give you a, and I actually did this the wrong way, give you a general idea of where this needs to see or needs to sit, and you can see right there I kind of have it sitting alongside. So next thing what we're actually going to do is, and I'll zoom back out here. Alright, what we're going to do is, and I'm going to step in front of you, is we're going to go ahead and bind. Alright, we're going to bind it and center everything out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in this battery. You ready? Alright, and what that's going to do is that centered our servos. As soon as it binds with the transmitter, everything should be centered out digitally and mechanically as far as how this servo goes. Now, what you want to do is just kind of plop your servo on right here. Okay, and it's going to take a little bit of adjustment just to make sure you get this on, you know, your servo on right. Alright, I think that should be on. Okay, and then you'll just adjust your aileron or your elevon just right. Okay, now you can see that if he moves the aileron, alright, pull down on the aileron. Alright, we're getting no response from this one whatsoever. Alright, but basically you'll just get into that configuration. That way you can pull this and you can see how it's moving my elevon. Alright, it'll pull the elevon into position. Once you get into position, screw down this top screw and then your stuff should be nice and centered to where it needs to be. Repeat that process for the other side and then everything should be centered. Now we're going to go ahead and figure out what's wrong with the servo here, and we'll get back with you and let you know what's going on. Alright, so here's the final setup. Alright, if you look really closely, that's pretty much what your setup should be like on your servos. Alright, you can cut this extra stuff off here if you want to. We like to leave it on there just because it's easier for fine-tuning the adjustments on there. Okay, we've done the exact same side or thing for the other side. Now, one thing I want to mention, the reason the servos did not work is because I actually had the lead plugged in. We had to use an extension for one side. So what that did was that basically just kind of left us hanging. For the distance, we had to use that extension. Well, when we used the extension, what that did for us was give me a little bit of a twist. I didn't have it plugged in right. So make sure your extensions, if you use them, are plugged in correctly. Now we've checked all the systems, everything's worked. The DX8 is probably one of the most pain in the butt systems to get this thing set up right as far as how the elevons work. but everything looks good. Now the only thing we need to do is check the CG. Now CG on the 1200 millimeter pop wing is going to be the actual hardest one to get out of the Mini, the 900, and the 1200. CG is hardest to find on this one because there's so many different things you can do to set it up. Now I'm reading here, all right, inside of this, it's 196 to 205 millimeter from the nose of the pop wing, all right, and because I want you to just see how it goes, I'll just show you right here. All right, you can see right there, it's going to be 196 to 205, and that's right by my thumb, okay, just so you know. So make sure you're utilizing that. I'm going to go ahead and measure, see where we come up with our CG, because we might need to add some weight onto this, depending on, I know we're using a pretty heavy motor and a pretty heavy battery, so I'm going to go ahead, put her on the CG machine, and once we get it balanced out, I'll let you know what problems, if any, we had when it comes to this wing. All right, so we decided to put our CG on this pop wing. We went ahead and put it at about 200 millimeters, which is pretty much like the halfway point, right between any of the measurements between the 196 and 205. We just went at 200 millimeters. It seems to balance pretty well. It'll float one way and then we'll tap it and it'll float all the way the other way. It seems like we're right on that sweet spot. So I would go with 200, just stick it in the middle, try the best. If you need to, if it's coming out tail heavy for you for some reason, add a little bit of weight to the nose and vice versa. If it's coming out extremely nose heavy, add a little bit of weight to the tail, but don't add too much. Nose heavy on this is actually going to be a little bit better for you. You never want a tail heavy wing because what it's going to do is just kind of flap out and just do like little flips on you. So this is the 1200 millimeter pop wing build by Wade's RC. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments box below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And just thanks again for watching.